We continue now at the top of Daf Samech Vav Amud Aleph and Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 66a. The Gemara says, Chamra atika be'invei, if you have old wine with grapes. The idea over here is you have grape juice that fermented into wine and then that drips onto the grapes and it imparts its taste into the grapes. So Divrei HaKol b'no sein tam, everybody agrees that if it's no sein tam, if it imparts its taste onto the grapes, so then the grapes are going to be prohibited, assuming again that the wine we're talking about is yayin nesech. Chamra chadeta b'invi, let's say you have new wine with grapes. What that essentially means is grape juice drops on the grapes. That essentially has the same taste, so it's not really imparting taste. Abaya Amar b'mashu, Abaya says that any amount is going to make it prohibited. V'Rava Amar b'no sein tam, and Rava says it's b'no sein tam, whatever amount is going to impart taste. And Rashi explains, Chamra atika, if it's old wine, taimon nikor ba'anavim, so then you can actually recognize the fact that the taste is in the grapes. Chamra chadeta, if it's new wine, meaning it's grape juice, b'no sein tam, then it's with the imparting of taste. V'chol hecha de'itmar no sein tam, and Rashi notes, anytime it says b'no sein tam, ve'ein taimon nikor, but you really can't tell the taste, which is the case over here, have a shiura b'shishim, so then the amount that we assume is going to be 1/60th. And so in any case, we have over here a machlokas amoraim between Abaya and Rava when it comes to grape juice that spills onto the grapes. Is the amount a mashahu, or is the amount b'no sein tam? And the Gemara continues, Abaya Amar b'mashu. Abaya says that it goes by any amount will prohibit the grapes, because basar taima azlin, and we follow the taste. Idi v'idi chad taimahu, they both have the same taste. So dahavale min b'mino, that's considered one species with the same kind. Umin b'mino b'mashu, if you have the same kind with one another, so it prohibits b'mashu even with the smallest amount. V'Rava Amar b'no sein tam, and Rava says that we go by no sein tam, which again Rashi says is 1/60th. Basar shmo azlinan, because we go by the name of the food. V'hai shmo lechud, v'hai shmo lechud. This has, each one has its own unique name. They're considered to be different. V'havale min b'she'eno mino, it's something with something that is not the same kind. Umin b'she'eno mino b'no sein tam. And the rule is if you have min b'she'eno mino, we follow the rule of no sein tam. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Yain nesech shenafal al gabe anovim v'chulu. It says if you have yayin nesech that falls onto the grapes, and again, it said that if there are cracks in the grapes and it imparts a taste, so then it's prohibited. So kasal kadaitach, right now we think chamra chadeta b'invei, that our Mishnah is talking about the exact same case as the machlokas amoraim. It's talking about new wine that falls onto the grapes, meaning grape juice that falls onto the grapes. My lav, is it not b'no sein tam? We're talking about the idea that it prohibits the grapes b'no sein tam, and that would be a proof to the opinion of Rava. And the Gemara says, lo no b'mashu, maybe it means that it makes it usher even with the smallest amount, and it's following Abaya. But the Gemara continues and asks, Hamidik Tani Sefer, but from the fact that it says at the end of the Mishnah, Zeh HaKlal, this is the rule, Kol shebahana aso b'no sein tam usher, anything which gives a beneficial taste b'no sein tam and imparts that taste, then it's usher, it's prohibited. Kol she'ein bahana aso b'no sein tam, anything that does not impart a beneficial taste, mutter, it is going to be permitted. From the fact that that's what it says at the end of the Mishnah, Mechlal divin no sein tam askinon, that implies the Mishnah in general is talking about no sein tam. And so again, it does seem to be a proof to Rava that if you have a situation of chamra chadeta be'invi, it has been no sein tam. And the Gemara continues via Abaya. Now Abaya will respond. How will he understand our Mishnah? Masnisen b'chamra atika be'invei, that our Mishnah is actually talking about old wine with grapes, meaning to say they have a different taste. And as we said at the top of the Yomid, anytime you have chamra atika be'invei, divrei hakol, everybody agrees it has been no sein tam. And the Gemara continues, Chola de chamra v'chola de shichra. Let's say you have vinegar of wine and you have vinegar of beer. V'chamira de chite v'chamira de sari. Or let's say you have leaven of wheat and leaven of barley. So what would happen in those cases? Let's say one item is prohibited and one is permitted and they mix together. Abaya Amar b'no sein tam. Abaya says that in these cases, we follow no sein tam because basar taim azlinan, because we follow the taste. And again, this is really what Abaya said above. Abaya above said that we follow the taste, and in that situation, it was one taste when it was grape juice with the grapes, and so therefore he said it's min b'mino, it's b'mashu. But here Abaya is saying we follow the tam, we follow the taste. V'hai taim l'chud, v'hai taim l'chud. And so over here, it's actually reversed because they have different tastes. In a situation where you have the chola de chamra, chola de shichra, that's a different taste. If you have the chamira de chite, chamira de sari, that's a different taste. And therefore, according to Abaya, v'havale min b'she'eno mino, it's a situation where it's different kind kinds. Min b'she'eino mino b'nosein tam. And the rule again is when you have min b'she'eino mino, it goes by the imparting of taste. The Rava Amar b'mashu, and Rava in this particular case is going to say that it's going to prohibit even with the smallest amount, as Rava said before, but again it reverses in this situation. Basar shemo azlinan, because we go by the name of the food. V'hai chola mikri, they're both called vinegar, and therefore they're considered the same. V'hai chamira mikri, this one's called leaven, and this one's called leaven. They're both called leaven, so they both have the same name. V'havale min b'mino, therefore it's considered of the same kind. V'chol min b'mino b'mashu, anytime you have min b'mino, it goes by the smallest amount. And Rashi explains, chola dechamra v'chola deshichra, vinegar of wine, vinegar of beer, chad de'isr v'chad de'heter. The idea is one is prohibited, one is permitted. And in the case of chamir dechite v'chamir desari, in the case of the leaven of wheat and the leaven of barley, chad dechulin v'chad detruma, one was chulin and one was truma. V'naflu zel l'soch zeh, and this one falls in this one. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya says, Mino amin Allah, from where can I show you the Vasar time hazlina, that we follow the taste? The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, the Mesoras Hashas changes this to the Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah. This is a Mishnah in Meseches Orla. Tavlin beis v'gimel shemos. Let's say you have spices of 2 or 3 different names. V'hein min echad, but they're all of the same kind. O min gimel, or let's say they're 3 different kinds. Asurin, they are prohibited. Umitzdarfen, and they combine with one another. V'yamar Chizkiah, and Chizkiah said on this Mishnah, Hacha b'minei mesiko askin, and here we're talking about spices that are all sweet. Hoel ru'uyin lemasik benes hakadeira, since they're all made to sweeten the kadeira, to sweeten the pot, that's why they all combine. And so Abaya says, Yamard b'shlama basar time mazlin. And if you say correctly that we follow the taste, essentially that's what Chizki is saying. They all sweeten in the same fashion. So kuli chad taima, what we're saying is they're all the same taste, and we follow the taste. Elo Yamard basar shmo azlin. But if you're going to say we follow the name, Hai shmo lechud v'hai shmo lechud. This one has its own unique name, and this one has its own unique name. And Rashi explains, Tavlin shnayim v'gimel shemos v'hein min echad o min gimel asur mitzdarfen. Again, you have 2 or 3 spices, and they have different names. Maybe they're the same kind, maybe they're different kinds, so they're prohibited and they combine together. Hachi garsin Meseches Orla. This is the proper text in Meseches Orla. Gimel shemos v'hein min echad. You could have a case where they have 3 names, but they're all of one kind. Could go in, for example, pilpil lavon, pilpil shachar, pilpil arach. Let's say you have white pepper, black pepper, and long pepper. O min gimel v'gimel shemos. Or you could have 3 different kinds, and they have 3 names. V'gimel shemos yeshlan. They have 3 different names. Asurin umitzdarfen. They're prohibited and they combine together. Meaning to say as follows: Im naflu l'kadeir. Let's say these prohibited spices, they fall to a pot. V'lo bazeh kadei l'tavel, v'lo bazeh kadei l'tavel. None of them on their own have enough to impart any taste, and therefore they really shouldn't prohibit on their own. V'nitzdarfu v'tivlu, but combined they actually do sweeten the pot. V'hein shal iser, and again they are iser. So mitzdarfen loser, they can combine to make the pot forbidden. V'yomar Chizkiah, and Chizkiah said, Hacha dekamar min gimel v'gimel shemos lahen mitzdarfen. Here where we're saying that if it's 3 different kinds and 3 different names, it combines. Afal gav detlasa minei ninu, even though they're 3 different kinds. Uv'shema nami lo shav, when they don't have the same name, but b'minei mesiko askin, and we're talking about where they sweeten. Shakulan taimon masak, they all taste sweet. Umishum hachim mitzdarfen, and that's why they combine. The taimon shava lemasik ben hakader, because they have the same taste in terms of sweetening the pot. And therefore Abaya says, you see from this Mishnah that we follow the taste. And the Gemara continues, V'Rava Amar Lach, and Rava will say to you, he'll interpret this Mishnah as follows: Hamani Rabbi Meir. Who is the author of this Mishnah? It is Rabbi Meir. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Meir, Minayin l'choli surin shabatorah shemitzdarfen zemzeh. How do we know that all prohibited items, food items in the Torah, combine with one another? Shenemar, as it says, Lo sochal kol toeva. It says, don't eat anything that's a toeva, that's an abomination. And it means kol shetiavti lach, anything that I say is abominable to you, harehu bebal tochal, that's included in bal tochal, and therefore Rabbi Meir has this unique opinion that it always combines, and he is the author of this Mishnah in Meseches Orla. And Rashi explains, V'Rava Amar Lach, and Rava will say to you, Hamani Rabbi Meir, he who's the author of this Mishnah, it's Rabbi Meir. V'Afa Gav Delo Shav, even though they are not equivalent to Lo B'Shma, not in their name, V'Lo B'Taima, and not in their taste. Ka'amar D'Mitzdarfen U'D'Chizkiah Lesa. He says that they do combine, and we do not hold of what Chizkiah said in interpreting that Mishnah. And the Gemara continues, Chala lego chamra, if a vinegar falls into wine, this is prohibited vinegar falling into the wine. Divrei hakol benosein tam. Everybody says we follow the taste. If it imparts taste, then it is prohibited. Chamra lego chala, in the reverse case, let's say it's the wine that goes into the vinegar. Abaya Amar v'mashu, Abaya says that it creates a prohibition even with the smallest amount. V'Rava Amar benosein tam, and Rava says we follow whether it imparts taste. Abaya Amar v'mashu, Abaya says it's with the smallest amount. And Rashi explains, Chala shenafa lago chamra, the vinegar falls into the wine. Chala de'iser lago chamra deheter. This is chala, this is vinegar which is prohibited, that falls into wine which is mutter. Divrei hakol benosein tam. Everybody says we follow the imparting of taste. The chinafa legavei lo havedomile, because at the time that it falls in there, when the vinegar falls into the wine, it's not similar. Lo berecha v'lo b'taima, not in terms of its smell or its taste. She'ein hayayin mevatel reach hachometz, because the wine does not nullify the smell of the vinegar, ashenis rabel asocho, until it accumulates within. V'lo hachometz mevatel reach hayayin mishum deruba chamra, and the vinegar also will not nullify the smell of the wine, because most of it is wine. And we will note that the Mesoras Hashas has a slightly different girsa of ad shenis arvel asocho, that the wine does not nullify the smell of the vinegar until it mixes within it. But again, it's the same basic idea. The point over here is that when the vinegar is falling into the wine, you have a situation of majority wine. So then you have a situation where the taste and the smell are not going to be similar. And therefore, we're going to say that in that situation, everybody agrees it's benosein tam. Avol chamra lego chala, but let's say it's the wine that's falling into the vinegar. Mishosh hegia la'aver hakli, the moment it reaches the airspace of the vessel, nepach hayayin berecho l'reach hachometz. What happens in this case, because there's less wine as compared to the vinegar, the wine smell actually changes to the smell of the vinegar. V'kodem shenesarvun, before they even mix, hayushavin berecho, and they have the same smell, and that's why we have a machlokas amoroim in this particular case when the wine goes into the vinegar, because they in fact do have the same smell before they mix together. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Vav Amud Beis.